All right, turn to chapter 2. We are going to be reading what you were hopefully reviewing last night. Again, I want to remind you, if you read it the night before, good. I promise you'll catch something when you come in here. You will catch more if you read it beforehand. I'll do my best to help you understand everything. There are a couple of times where I skip, and that's just because we don't have enough time to get through. And I'll tell you what happens enough so that you can still develop your characters and understand the plot. What are the 3 things we're focusing on with this? Plot structure, understanding the development of something that's longer than 10 pages, character development, and then understanding how a book changes culture, all right? How it affects our culture. Chapter 2, Black Dog appears and disappears. It was not very long after this that there occurred the first of the mysterious events that rid us at last of the captain, though not, as you will see, of his affairs. At the bottom of page 5 here it says, what are we going to do with the captain here soon?
He's going to be gone.
He's going to be gone. But what is not going to be gone? No, not his girlfriends.
His chest.
The affairs. We'll be rid of him, but as you will see, not his affairs. What are those?
The events that take place around him.
Well, the stuff that takes place because of him. He's come into their life. There's going to be stuff to deal with because he came into their life. We may be rid of him, but not the stuff that he brought along with him. The issues, if you will. It was a bitter cold with long, hard frosts and heavy gales. It was plain from the first that my poor father was little likely to see the spring, foreshadowing what's going to happen. He gone. He sank daily, and my mother and I had all the inn upon our hands, and were kept busy enough without paying much regard to our unpleasant guest. It was one January morning, very early, a pinching frosty morning, the cove all gray with hoar frost, the ripple lapping softly on the stones, the sun still low and only touching the hilltops and shining far to seaward. The captain had risen earlier than usual, and set out down the beach, his cutlass swinging under the broad skirts of the old blue coat, his brass telescope under his arm, his hat tilted back upon his head, and I remember his breath hanging like smoke in the wake as he strode off. And the last sound I heard of him as he turned the big rock was a loud snort of indignation, as though his mind was still running upon Dr. Livesey. Great imagery here. You can see his sword, his hat, probably the feather hanging out. He's got the spyglass under his arm. He's got like I said, his breath hanging in the air. That picture. Anybody ever seen somebody that looks like that?
No.
No? Captain Jack Sparrow kind of looks like that, doesn't he? He's got these weird mannerisms and right? Or somebody else said Barbossa. Captain Barbossa from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So clearly this guy wrote this book after he watched Pirates of the Caribbean. Right?
Yeah. Totally.
Right. Or maybe Pirates of the Caribbean are like, wow, this guy really does a good job of describing what Okay. Well, Mother was upstairs with Father, and I was laying the breakfast table against the captain's return. He always wants rum and eggs, right? When the parlor door opened, and a man stepped in on whom I had never set my eyes before. He was a pale, tallowy creature, wanting 2 fingers of the left hand. What does that mean, Hannah?
He's missing 2 fingers.
Yeah, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. And though he wore a cutlass, he did not look much like a fighter. I had always my eye open for a seafaring man, with 1 leg or 2. And I remember this one puzzled me. He was not sailorly, and yet he had a smack of the sea about him too. I asked him what was for his service, and he said he would like rum. But as I was going out of the room to fetch it, he he sat down upon a table and motioned me to draw near. I paused where I was with my napkin in my hand. "Come here, sonny. Come nearer here." I took a step nearer. "Is this here table for my mate Bill?" he asked, with kind of a leer. I told him I did not know his mate Bill, and this was for a person who stayed in our house, whom we called Captain. "Well," said he, "my mate Bill would be called the Captain as like as not. He has a cut on one cheek, and mighty pleasant way with him, particularly in drink. That's my mate Bill. We'll put it for argument like, that your Captain has a cut on one cheek, and we'll put it if you like, that cheek's the right one." "Ah, well, I told you. Now, is my mate Bill in this here house?" I told him he was out walking. "Which way, sonny? Which way is he gone?" And when I had pointed out the rock and told him how the Captain was likely to return and how soon, and answered a few other questions, "Ah," said he, "this'll be as good as drink to my mate Bill." The expression of his face as he said these words was not at all pleasant, and I had my own reasons for thinking that the stranger was mistaken, even supposing he meant what he said. It was no affair of mine, I thought, and besides, it was difficult to know what to do. The stranger kept hanging about just inside the inn door, peering round the corner like a cat.
Mr. Peterman, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you send Blake Aria to the office for just a minute, please?
He's on his way. Like a cat waiting for a mouse. Once I stepped out of myself into the road, but immediately he called me back. And as I did not obey quick enough for his fancy, a most horrible change came over his tallowy face, and he ordered me in with an oath that made me jump. As soon as I was back again, he returned to his former manner, half fawning, half sneering, patted me on the shoulder, told me I was a good boy, and he had taken quite a fancy to me. And "I have a son of my own," said he, "as like you as two blocks, and he's all the pride of my heart. But the great thing for boys is discipline, sonny, discipline. Now, if you had sailed along with Bill, you wouldn't have stopped there to be spoke to twice, not you. That was never Bill's way, nor the way of such as sailed with him. Oh, and here, sure enough, is my mate Bill with a spyglass under his arm. Bless his old heart, to be sure. You and me'll just go back into the parlour, sonny, and get behind the door. We'll give Bill a little surprise. Bless his heart, I say again." So saying, the stranger backed along with me into the parlor and put me behind him in the corner, so that we were both hidden by the door. I was very uneasy and alarmed, as you may fancy, and it rather added to my fears to observe that the stranger was certainly frightened himself. He cleared the hilt of his cutlass and loosened the blade in the sheath, and all the time we were waiting there, he kept swallowing, as if he felt what we used to call a lump in the throat. At last in strode the Captain, slammed the door behind him without looking to the right or left, and marched straight across to the room to where his breakfast awaited him. "Bill," said the stranger, in a voice that I thought he had tried to make bold and big. The Captain spun round on his heel and fronted us. All the brown had gone out of his face, and even his nose was blue. He had the look of a man who'd seen a ghost, or the evil one, or something worse, if anything can be. And upon my word, I felt so sorry for him to see him all in a moment turn so old and sick. "Come, Bill, you know me. You know an old shipmate, Bill, surely," said the stranger. The Captain made a sort of gasp. "Black dog," said he. "And who else?" returned the other, getting more at his ease. "Black dog as ever was. Come to see his old shipmate Billy at the Admiral Benbow Inn. Oh, Bill, we've seen a sight of times, us two, since I lost them 2 talons," holding up his mutilated hand. "Now you look here. You've run me down, here I am. Well, then speak up, what is it?" "That's you, Bill," returned Black Dog. "You're in the right of it, Billy. I'll have a glass of rum from this dear child here, as I've took such a liking to, and we'll sit down, if you please, and talk square, like old shipmates." When I returned with the rum, they were already seated on either side of the Captain's breakfast table. Black Dog next to the door, and sitting sideways, so as to have one eye on his old shipmate, and one, I thought, on his retreat. He bade me go and leave the door wide open. None of your gills for me, sonny, he said. And I left them together and retired into the bar. For a long time, though, I certainly did my best to listen. I'm like, hey, get out here. Don't listen. The old keyholes, listen in on our conversation. Leave that door open so I know where you are. And he's got an eye on the exit. And I was like, let's talk, Billy Bones. Let's talk. I could hear nothing but a low gabbling. But at last, the two voices began to grow higher. And I could pick up a word or two, mostly oaths from the captain. No, 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 he cried again. If it comes to swinging, swing all, say I. Then all of a sudden, there was a tremendous explosion of oaths and other noises. A chair and table went over in a lump. A clash of steel followed, and then a cry of pain. Ah! And the next instant, I saw a black dog in full flight, and the captain hotly pursuing, both with drawn cutlasses, and the former streaming blood from the left shoulder. Now you're probably wondering why somebody circled some words in your book, right? Mm-hmm. What I want to make sure is you've either underlined or circled the word black dog. Most of you have it circled. If you haven't, I would say circle it if you don't have it circled in that sentence. If you have it underlined, just keep track of whether you underline it. If you circled black dog, I want you to underline the word captain.
What about the other way?
And then other way around. If you underline black dog, circle captain. This is where it might get confusing, but the question is, who got injured? Who got injured? He says some weird stuff here. He says the former is bleeding, streaming blood from the left shoulder. Which one did we circle or underline first? Black dog. Former means the first. So if you circle black dog, I want you to circle former. If you underline black dog, underline the word former. There's another book back there, but those black ones, go get it.
Oh.
Actually, here you go. Come get this one over here. We're on page 9. So that's just a little bit of a grammar syntax thing. You understand that when somebody says former, it means the first person I mentioned. The first person I mentioned. When you say the latter, it's the last person I mentioned. The former came out streaming with blood. The latter had a sword raised up above his head. Just at the door, the captain aimed at the fugitive one last tremendous cut, which would certainly have split him to the chine, or cut his spine off, had it not been intercepted by our big signboard of the Admiral Benbow. You may see the notch on the lower side of the frame to this day. Ooh, let's take a field trip to England to go see the notch in the Admiral Benbow sign. Sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sign up. Let's go.
Where are we starting?
That's fine.
No. That blow was the last of the battle. Once out upon the road, Black Dog, in spite of his wound, he was the one who was injured, showed a wonderful clean pair of heels. That means he's running so fast you could see his feet coming up. And disappeared over the edge of the hill in half a minute. The captain, for his part, stood staring at the signboard like a bewildered man. Then he passed his hand over his eyes several times and turned back into the house. Jim, rum. And as he spoke, he reeled a little and caught himself with one hand against the wall. "All you had?" cried I. "Rum! I must get away from here! Rum! Rum!" I ran to fetch it, but I was quite unsteadied by all that had fallen out, and I broke a glass, and I fouled the tap, and while I was still getting in my own way, I heard a loud fall in the parlor. And running in, beheld the captain lying full length upon the floor. At the same instant, my mother, alarmed by the cries and fighting, came running down the stairs to help me. Between us, we raised his head, and breathing very loudly and hard. He was breathing very loudly and hard, but his eyes were closed, and his face a horrible color. Dearie me," cried my mother. "What a disgrace upon the house, and your poor father's sick." In the meantime, we had no idea what to do to help the captain, nor any other thought but that he had got his death hurt in the scuffle with the stranger. I got the rum, to be sure, and tried to put it down his throat, but his teeth were tightly shut, and his jaws as strong as iron. It was a happy relief for us when the door opened, and Dr. Livesey came in on his visit to my father. "Oh, Doctor," we cried, "what shall we do? Where is he? Wounded." "Wounded? Fiddlesticks, and," said the doctor. "No more wounded than you or I. The man has had a stroke, as I warned him. Now, Mrs. Hawkins, just you run upstairs to your husband and tell him, if possible, nothing about it. For my part, I must do my best to save this fellow's trebly worthless life. And Jim here will get me a basin." When I got back with the basin, the doctor had already ripped up the captain's sleeve and exposed his great sinewy arm. It was tattooed in several places with "Here's luck," "A fair wind," and "Billy Bones hits fancy," were very neatly and clearly executed on the forearm. And up near the shoulder there was a sketch of a gallows and a man hanging from it, done, as I thought, with great spirit. "Prophetic," said the doctor, touching the picture with his finger. "And now, Mr. Billy Bones, if that be your name, we'll have a look at the colour of your blood. Jim, are you afraid of blood?" "No, sir," said I. "Well then, hold your basin." And with that he took his lancet and opened a vein. A great deal of blood was taken before the captain opened his eyes and looked mistily about him. First he recognized the doctor with an unmistakable frown. Then his glance fell upon me, and he looked relieved. But suddenly his color changed, and he tried to raise himself, crying, "Where's Black Dog?" "There's no black dog here," said the doctor, "except what you have on your own back. You have been drinking rum. You've had a stroke, and precisely as I told you. And I have just very much against my own will dragged you head foremost out of the grave. Now, Mr. Bones—" "That's not my name," he interrupted. "Much I care," returned the doctor. "It's the name of a buccaneer of my acquaintance, and I call you by it for the sake of shortness. And what I have to say to you is this: one glass of rum won't kill you, but if you take one, you'll take another and another. And I take my wig if you don't break off short or you'll die. Do you understand that? Die, and go to your own place like the man in the Bible. Come now, make an effort. I'll help you to your bed for once." Between us, with much trouble, we managed to hoist him upstairs and laid him on his bed, where his head fell back on the pillow, as if he were almost fainting. "Now, mind you, I clear my conscience. The name of rum for you is death." And with that, he went off to see my father, taking me with him by the arm. "There is nothing," he said, as soon as he had closed the door. This is nothing. I have drawn blood enough to keep him quiet a while. He should lie for a week where he is. That's the best thing for him and you. But another stroke would settle him." So he's had a stroke. Dr. Livesey saved his life. We find out his name's Billy Bones because of the tattoo on his arm. And now we're moving on to Chapter 3, The Black Spot. Evoke any memories?
Yeah.
You've heard of a black spot before?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I think it wasn't the thing that
Yeah, it's right
Jack
here.
Sparrow had in the movie.
Yeah, there's something in the movie,
He
right?
like gave him it and he was like, "It's all black."
We'll see what happens here with a black spot and see if there's any connection, all right? About noon, I stopped at the captain's door with some cooling drinks and medicines. He was lying very much as we had left him, only a little higher, and he seemed both weak and excited. "Jim, you're the only one here that's worth anything. And you know I've always been good to you. Never a month I've been giving you a silver, but I've given you a silver 4 penny for yourself. And now you see, mate, I'm pretty low and deserted by all. And Jim, you'll bring me one noggin of rum now, won't you, matey?" "But the doctor," I began, but he broke in cursing the doctor in a feeble voice, but hardly. "Doctors is all swabs. And that doctor there, why, what do he know about seafaring men? I've been in places hot as pitch, mates dropping around with Yellow Jack, and blessed land, a heaving like that, sea with earthquakes. What do the doctor know of lands like that? And I lived on rum, I tell you. It's been meat and drink and wife, man and wife to me, and I'm not to have my rum now. I'm a poor old hulk on a lee shore. My blood be on you, Jim and Dr. Swab." Ran on again for a while with Chris. Look, Jim, how my fingers fidgets. She's like, I'm starting to tremor. What he's doing is he's jonesing, like he's like, I need my alcohol. He's going through withdrawal. He continued in a pleading tone, I can't keep him still, don't I? I haven't had a drop this blessed day. Doctor's a fool, I tell you. If I don't have a drain of rum, Jim, I'll have no orders. I've seen some on them already. I seen old Flint in the corner there behind you, as plain as print. I seen him. Who? What? Says he's seeing visions. He's so having such bad withdrawals. Everybody should write that name down somewhere. What's the name?
Flint.
Flint. You should write down the word Flint on something. And if I get whores, I'm a man that has lived rough, and I'll raise Cain. The doctor himself said 1 glass wouldn't hurt me. I'll give you a golden guinea for a noggin, Jim. He was growing more and more excited, and this alarmed me for my father, who was very low that day and needed quiet. It's like, man, you're freaking out. You're going to wake up my dad. Fine, get you some rum. I was reassured by the doctor's words now quoted to me, and rather offended by the offer of a bribe. I want none of your money, said I, but what you owe my father. I'll get you 1 glass and no more. Aye, said he, that's some, oh wait, when I brought it to him, he seized it greedily and drank it out. Aye, that's some better, sure enough. And now, man, did that doctor say how long I was to lie here in this old berth? A week at least, said I. Thunder! A week? I can't do that. They'd have the black spot on me by then. The lovers is going to get wind of me this blessed moment. Lovers is couldn't keep what they got and want to nail what is others. Is that seemingly behavior now? I want to know. But I'm a saving soul. I never wasted good money of mine, nor lost it neither. And I'll trick him again. I'm not afraid on him. I'll shake out another reef, matey, and dab him again. This guy is rambling about some weird stuff like money and lost and saves. Like, what are you talking about? As he was thus speaking, he had risen from his bed with great difficulty, holding to my shoulder with a grip that almost made me cry out, and moving his legs like so much dead weight. His words, spirited as they were in meaning, contrasted sadly with the weakness of his voice in which they were uttered. He paused when he had got into a sitting position on the edge. Oh, that doctor's done me. My ears is singing. Oh, lay me back, lay me back. Before I could do much to help him, he had fallen back again to his former place, where he lay for a while, silent. Jim, he said at length, you saw that seafaring man today? Black dog? I asked. Oh, black dog. He's a bad one. But there's worse that put him on. Now if I can't get away nohow, and they tip me the black spot, mind you, it's my old sea chest they're after. You got on a horse. You can, can't you? Well, then you get on a horse and go to, well, yes, I will, to that eternal Dr. Swab and tell him to pipe all hands. Magistrates in Sitch, he'll lay him aboard at the Admiral Benbow. All old Flint's crew, man and boy, all of them that's left. I was first mate, I was. Old Flint's first mate. And I'm the only one as knows the place. He gave it me to Savannah when he lay dying. Like as if I was to you now, you see. And you won't peach unless they get the black spot on me, or unless you see that black dog again. But a seafaring man with 1 leg. Jim, him, above all. He is rambling. He was first mate for what? Yeah? For Flint. Okay, there's a crew. Some guy named Flint, and he was first mate? I don't know what that means. Huh?
That was a pirate.
Well, he was on a boat, right?
He was like on a boat.
What's a first mate mean? Yeah?
Isn't it like second in command? Like
Yeah.
Elijah and
And he gave him something and told him where it was and when he was dying. Just like as I'm dying here, I'm telling you. But Jim's like, whatever, man. You're crazy. Whatever. What the? He's still back like half a page before where it says, but what's the black spot, Captain? That's a summons, mate. What's a summons? It's when you get called to something. I don't know if I should have had it on there, but I think it got deleted. Instead, I put noggin twice. A summons is when you get called to a meeting. It's a summons, mate. I'll tell you if they get that, but you keep your weather eye open, Jim, and I'll share with you equals upon my honor. He wondered a little longer, his voice growing weaker, but soon after I had given him his medicine, which he took like a child, with a remark, "If ever a seaman wanted drugs, it's me," he fell at last into a heavy, swoon-like sleep, in which I left him. What I should have done, had all gone well, I do not know. Probably I should have told the whole story to the doctor, for I was in mortal fear lest the captain should repent of his confessions and make an end of me. But as things fell out, my poor father died quite suddenly that evening. All right, so we find out that his dad dies. We're going to skip over to the top of page 13. And he comes downstairs. He couldn't sing. He's tired. And he's just like, rum. So he's sitting in the parlor room, in the corner, drinking rum. We're on the top right-hand corner where it says, page 13, so things passed. So things passed until the day after the funeral. And about 3 o'clock of a bitter, foggy, frosty afternoon, I was standing at the door for a moment, full of sad thoughts about my father, when I saw someone drawing slowly near along the road. He was plainly blind, for he tapped before him with a stick, and wore a great green shade over his eyes and nose, and he was hunched as if with age or weakness, and wore a huge old tattered sea cloak with a hood that made him appear positively deformed. I never saw in my life a more dreadful looking figure. He stopped a little from the inn and raised his voice in an odd sing-song, addressed the air in front of him. "Will any kind friend inform a poor blind man who has lost his precious sight and eyes over the gracious defence of his native country, England, and God bless King George, where and what part of this country he may now be?" "You're at the Admiral Benbow, Black Hill Cove, my good man." "I hear a voice," he said, "a young voice. Will you give me your hand and my kind young friend and lead me in?" I held out my hand, and the horrible, soft-spoken, eyeless creature gripped it in a moment like a vice. I was so much startled that I struggled to withdraw, but the blind man pulled me close up to him with the single action of his arm. "Now, boy, take me to the captain." "Sir, upon my word, I dare not." "Oh, that's it. Take me in straight, or I'll break your arm." And he gave it, as he spoke, a wrench that made me cry out, "Ah! Sir, it's for yourself, I mean. The captain's not what he used to be. He sits with a drawn cutlass. Another gentleman—" "Come now, March," he interrupted. And I never heard a voice so cruel and cold and ugly as that blind man's. It cowed me more than the pain. I began to obey him at once, walking straight in at the door and towards the parlor where our sick old buccaneer was sitting, dazed with rum. The blind man clung close to me, holding me in one iron fist and leaning almost more of his weight on me than I could carry. "Lead me straight up to him. When I'm in view, cry out, 'Here's a friend for you, Bill. If you don't do this, I'll do this.'" And with that he gave me a twitch that I thought would have made me faint. Between this and that, I was so utterly terrified of the blind beggar that I forgot my terror of the captain. And as I opened the parlor door, cried out the words as he ordered in a trembling voice, "There's a friend for you, Bill." The poor captain raised his eyes, and at one look the rum went out of him and left him staring sober. The expression of his face was not so much of terror as of mortal sickness. He made a movement to rise, but I do not believe he had enough force left in his body. "Now, Bill, sit where you are," said the beggar. "If I can't see, I can hear a finger stirring. Business is business. Hold out your left hand. Boy, take his left hand by the wrist and give it near to my right." We both obeyed him to the letter, and I saw him pass something from the hollow of his hand, that's right here, the hollow of his hand, that held his stick into the palm of the captain's, which closed upon it instantly. "And now that's done," said the blind man. And at the words he suddenly left hold of me, and with incredible accuracy and nimbleness, skipped out of the parlor and into the road where, as I stood motionless, I could hear his stick go tap, 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 tap in the distance. It was some time before either I or the captain seemed to gather our senses. But at length, and about the same moment, I released his wrist, which I was still holding, and he drew his hand and looked sharply to the palm. "10 o'clock!" he cried. "6 hours! We'll do them yet!" And he sprang to his feet. Even as he did so, he reeled, put his hand to his throat, stood swaying for a moment, and then with a peculiar sound, fell from his whole height, face foremost to the floor. I ran to him at once, calling to my mother, but haste was all in vain. The captain had been struck dead by thundering apoplexy. It is a curious thing to understand, for I had certainly never liked the man, though of late I had begun to pity him. But as soon as I saw that he was dead, I burst into a flood of tears. It was the second death I had known, and the sorrow of the first was still fresh in my heart. Who died?
The captain.
The captain. Who visited him?
Blind
Old
guy.
people.
Blind guy and black dog?
Yeah, he almost got him.
Black dog. He almost killed. If he could have gotten black dog, everything would have been okay. Maybe. All right? Anything that doesn't make sense? Yeah, seriously about the plot.
How did the captain die?
Okay, he had another stroke.
Oh.
He had another stroke. It was so much adrenaline pumping from seeing the blind guy again. He hadn't seen him in so long. That, and frustration from seeing the black spot, that he stood up so fast that it killed him. Yeah?
When the doctor said, like, his name, why did he say that was his name?
To call him I think he called him Mr. Mr. Bill, or Mr. Bones. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I've always thought it was because he said Mr. Yeah. This guy always thought it was just because he called him Mr. Bones, Mr. Bill, Billy.
That's obviously not his last name.
Right, his last name's not Bones. His name's like probably McPherson or something. I don't know. Billy McPherson. All right. What are some of the vocab words that you saw in the story that you recognized? Yeah. Pipe.
Apoplexy.
Apoplexy. All right. Yep.
Fancy.
Fancy. You saw it in there. Yes.
Cutlass.
The cutlass. Noggin. He was in there twice. Yep. What? The chine. Oh yeah, where he was going to cut him in half. Yes. Aaron.
Oh, wanting.
Wanting. Yeah, the wanting two fingers. Guinea.
Yeah, guinea.
Guinea. Yes. Sinewy. Yeah, sinews. Yes.
Chine.
Chine. Yeah, his spine.
Talons.
The talon. We saw that one. Tiffany.
Horse.
What's one?
Horse.
Oh, the hoarfrost. Is that the one you're looking at?
No, horse.
Oh, horrors. Oh, yeah, like the visions and stuff like that. Yep.
Mutilated.
Mutilated. And no, last one.
Lubbers.
Lovers. Yeah, oh, lovers. What do you got, Pipe?
Spyglass.
Oh, Spyglass. That's going to be in the next one. What's the title?